Hi, everybody. Welcome. Dave Walker here. It is the evening of October 20th, and we are doing our second live panel this evening. And it's all about local media. And local media is not a subject that comes up very often in the events that we have run. But in this particular case, we really wanted to, given the things that have happened this year, we really wanted to invite some representatives of really kind of local media around the country to come and talk to us about the role that local media will play in small business recovery, something that I think has been very much top of mind for all of us, particularly this week in all the sessions that we've had. So with that, I would like to kind of go around the horn here and first introduce Liz, starting with you, Liz White. If you could just give us a little bit about you and your background and your what you publish.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today, David. I appreciate that you're asking this question about how local media can be part of this recovery process. First of all, I think that's just a great perspective that you have. So RJ Media Group is 153 years old, a media company, and it's family owned and operated. And I am the publisher and the fifth generation family owner. And we own 1 daily newspaper, 7 weekly newspapers, 2 websites, and a full service digital agency covering 100% of 9 towns in central Connecticut. And you had put a couple other things on here like passions revealed or things like that. And for our company, our motto is succeed or fail fast. So don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to take risks. And when you have successes, stop and celebrate them. That's really important. Take a pause, clap, and virtually get people together to celebrate. You know, it's a little bit different right now. Or fail fast if something doesn't work. You know, try again, move on to the next thing. So we have a real passion for continuously innovating to continue to provide trusted local news to our community. To help local businesses grow and to help support our community. So I'm obviously, as a 5th generation family owner, really committed to the success and the future of our business, but also our community as I live and work here too. So
it's funny that you speak like a startup founder. You speak like an entrepreneur, not somebody who's been in the family business.
Well, you have to. That's how you have to operate in order to succeed, I think, right? So you can't just rest on the fact that you've been around for 153 years. You have to be creative and innovative. So.
That's terrific. John Newby, how about you?
Well, I'm actually, I was in the newspaper industry for 30 years, and it's interesting how life throws twists at you. First of all, I don't even know how I got into the newspaper industry. I just ended up there somehow. But it was interesting. About 3 years ago, our youngest son got very ill. And I just felt we had to be out in Utah quite a bit. So I resigned my group publisher position with CNHI and wanted to spend time with them, and I knew I still had to make money. And so in the meantime, there was an opening. Actually, the city came to me, and they wanted to create a Main Street Muskogee downtown revitalization group. And they asked me if I would lead that. And I said, well, as long as I can have the flexibility, I'm more than happy to do that, at least in the interim. And so what that did is it kind of introduced me to a whole different world of economic development, small business, revitalizing downtowns, those types of things. And kind of about 2 years in, I left that because I took some consulting jobs with Hearst and a few other companies to actually take what I'd learned and kind of try to put it into real life. And what I learned was that media has so much in common with their local communities and vice versa. And media cannot survive without the local community. And I'll go as far as to say the local community may not be able to survive without the media. But both of them don't necessarily realize that to the extent that they should. And we'll talk about some of that later on. But so that's kind of my story. It's I kind of abbreviated it real quick, but I have a passion now for small businesses, local communities, and newspapers. And I think the combination of those three are actually what will save newspapers. So that's my intro.
Here, here. I've always thought that the salvation of newspapers was not in the very large advertisers that I used to represent. There really existed at a local level. So Jay Small, tell us about yourself.
Well, and thanks, David. Unlike John, I do know exactly how I got into the newspaper business. I grew up in it. I think this is something that'll be somewhat familiar to Liz as well. I'm third generation of the family that for years ran my tiny little hometown newspaper, which is barely there anymore, but you know, fingers crossed that they can survive. I've been a photographer, reporter, copy editor, designer, graphic artist, creative director, and starting in 1994, very early days of the web, started working in digital for local media companies. I ran the first websites for the Indianapolis Star, and then worked with media groups that had both newspapers and broadcasters, TV broadcasters, you know, culminating up. My last job before joining LMA was president of digital for Cordillera Communications, which was a television station group. At LMA, I'm chief operating officer, and LMA, Local Media Association, is all about business transformation and sustainability for local media of all forms. We work with more than 3,000 local newspapers, TV stations, radio stations, digital pure plays, and R&D companies that serve the local media industry. So a lot of the companies that are on the roster of sponsors that is at the footer of the emails you're sending for this particular conference are companies that we have worked with and that a lot of our members and constituents work with routinely.
So up to 3,000 entities now. I remember years ago when you were Suburban Newspaper Network, and it was maybe 300 papers at that point. But I mean, how you've grown, it's fantastic. So Liz, you mentioned it a little bit in your intro, but I guess I think you can well represent on behalf of many local media outlets, whether it be newspapers or radio or whatever. But what is the role that you play, that local media plays, particularly as it relates to small business in the community?
Sure. So the way that I think about it is, you know, from our newsroom standpoint, from our advertising standpoint, and from our community standpoint, but all of those things intertwine and overlap. So none of those are in one, you know, in a silo by themselves. So I think if you wanted to make a broad statement, I think of it as being a trusted local community partner and leader, and being open to and willing to collaborate with anyone and everyone to help our local community, right? So, you know, I'll probably say this a bunch of times, but if our community and our local businesses don't survive, then we don't survive, right? So we're part of the local business community. We're part of the local community in and of itself. So helping everybody and collaborating any way possible. And I think, you know, I mentioned it in the beginning, we have to be a lot more creative and innovative probably than ever before, especially during the pandemic, but even in the last 5 to 10 years. So being open to having a conversation with anyone about ways that we can help, right? How can we help, and listening very specifically to how we can help them, because ultimately that will end up benefiting us in the long run too. You know, and of course, our role as a trusted local news source for information that they can't get anywhere else is vitally important, especially during pandemic. You know, everything is sort of heightened during this time frame, but that's always been the case. And you know, in a lot of small community newspapers, the information provided by the local newspaper is information you cannot get anywhere else, right? So that extends beyond just the news coverage, which is obviously vital in the foundation, but it also is the local advertising messages too, right? So that's really important information that advertisers might not be able to spread that message any other way. And then also being a multimedia solution, and this is true for a lot of companies right now, a multimedia solution to help local businesses grow. So, you know, obviously we're a newspaper, but this applies to radio, TV, and any digital marketing as well. But for us specifically, you know, we want to be thought of as a place where they can come to get a variety of solutions. We know that they're still going to advertise in other mediums, but we want to be a place where they can get a lot of different things to help their business grow. And just overall, going back to the role of, you know, what role do we play? Being innovative, being creative, being cutting edge, because we all have to be that right now. But in general, I think newspapers have a responsibility to their community to figure out a way to help any way possible.
That's terrific. John, I met you not long after you had written a column that was just fantastic, shared it with our entire audience of the Institute. But it was really, you laid out the economic case for the support of small business. So could you kind of walk through how the argument that you made at a high level and really kind of share and set the stage for us as we kind of talk about, okay, this is the local media can help small businesses, but this is why it's worth doing.
Sure. It was, you know, I believe that newspapers, media in general, not just newspapers, are probably missing the biggest story of the century, including the pandemic. Now, that's a bold statement.
It is.
But here's why I say that. And I guess I wouldn't say that in a metro market, but in a local community market, here's why I say that. You know, and most of our, you know, and I learned this in Muskogee, just playing, I'm a numbers guy. And in order for, when you compare small business, local businesses with the big boxes and chains, and I certainly don't want to disparage the national chains and big boxes. It's the key is balance. You know, you need to have a balance in your community of everything. But what happens is most communities have huge incentive for big boxes to come to town. You know, they'll give them tax break, TIF districts, whatever it takes. But what they don't realize is they're actually robbing their community when they do that. If I were to take $1 and spend at a local business, whatever that business might be, that dollar will recirculate through the community. Studies have told us between 3 and 7 times. So that's almost like spending $3 or $7 in that community versus if I go to Best Buy or Walmart, you know, I'm going to spend $1. They may, you know, obviously they'll pay their local employees, but the rest of that money is going to leave town. You know, it's not going to pave our roads. It'll pave the roads in Bentonville or wherever the corporate headquarters are. So, and so the example we used in Muskogee was if everybody in Muskogee were to spend $25 a month at a local business in lieu of a big box. Now, granted, you're going to pay a little bit more in some cases because the local businesses don't have the scale of a Walmart or Best Buy and all the big chains. But if in Muskogee, Oklahoma, if everybody did that each month, that would generate over the course of a year, when you include the 3% or the 3-time compounding, about $40 million in the Muskogee business market. How many jobs is that going to save? How many new businesses is that going to start? How many people will that save, you know, throughout the community? But it goes way deeper than that. You know, and I didn't really write this in the column that you're familiar with, but community support. Did you know that local owners, local business people will spend about 3 times the amount on local charities, on local causes, and they'll be 4 times more likely to be engaged in local civic organizations and government and leadership positions. And here's one that's kind of interesting. The poverty rate in a community is directly tied to the number of small businesses that are in that community. In other words, the higher your level of small business ownership, the greater the chance that your poverty will be less. Whereas the more national chains that you have in your community, and we're talking local communities now, we're not talking metro areas, we're talking, you know, local, yeah, small town America. But the more national chains you have in your community, the higher the poverty rate. And it's a numbers game, because if you're spending all your money at these national chains or e-commerce and so forth, all that money is being sucked out of your community. And that's why I say that you look at, well, one more number out there. You know, when you invest in your own city, you know, in Muskogee, actually across the state of Oklahoma, and I think we're kind of average nationally, but when the city spends tax dollars in their downtown business district, that they'll get a 30% greater return on that tax dollar than anywhere else they'll spend that money in the city. And that includes courting big chains and boxes. So the financial argument for the city and the media to support small business is irrefutable. But we're in these habits of, you know, we need to have the next big, you know, shopping center, and we got to get Walmart to town. You know, like dollar stores are on every corner now. You know, but those are all really to our detriment. And so I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but
no, that's it, John. I mean, it's a brilliantly summarized, and what caught my attention because the numbers were so breathtaking, and I think that you know, to pick up on what Liz was saying is that if local media is really at the nexus of the community and small businesses, and then even more kind of critical in communicating, look, this is the value, this is the genuine economic value of the local small businesses that are here. Don't just do it because American Express tells you to. Don't just do it because you think it's right to patronize your corner store. You're absolutely driving a huge financial impact in your community. So thanks for basing us, putting a foundation there on the economic rationalization. Jay, kind of over to you. And I know that you know, you're obviously in dialogue with hundreds, probably a week, of local media around the country. What can you summarize what they're talking about right now, and what they're talking about on behalf of their small businesses in their communities?
Had to remember to unmute. Sorry, it had to happen at least once during the.
At least once, it always does.
Well, we do kind of have our ears to the tracks in terms of what local media, sales executives, and general management are hearing in their communities via some of our virtual clubs, and also just through routine communications with members and constituents. And you know, the obvious things we're hearing and have been hearing really since March, since COVID took hold, are significant reductions in volume of ad spending, with some recovery in more recent months, or at least stabilization in recent months. And that's symptomatic, of course, of the struggles that a lot of small businesses are facing, you know, just to keep doors open and lights on, with or without government assistance, PPP loans and such. It's, you know, it is a real struggle, and that is carrying through in terms of what we're hearing from local media. And, you know, I have to say I'm experiencing the impact of the pandemic firsthand on one particular small business, and that is the cafe and sweet shop that my wife runs here in our town. We bootstrapped that business over the past 4 or 5 years, and it's representative of a category that's really suffering. I mean, we're hearing this from all over the country from COVID, and that is the food service industry. You know, between bans or restrictions on indoor seating, you know, people have worries and reduced interest in dining out, extra caution and care that you have to take to keep employees healthy, and then the costs of pivoting from, you know, what is traditionally a destination business to things like carry out, delivery, and e-commerce. I'll go back to John's point about the difference between a single small business and a franchise or chain business. You know, if you look at what Chick-fil-A has been able to do in the pandemic to pivot to completely carry out and drive through, closing their in location dining, in some ways they're more successful now than they were pre-pandemic. But that's because they have the scale and the supply chain and the resources that a lot of small businesses would not have. So just as a representative sample of what a true mom and pop style small business might see, the business that my wife operates, you know, she employs 3 or 4 people, full or part-time. And, you know, it would be a real impact, not only on our lives, but on those people's lives and their ability to spend in their communities. Again, to John's point, just to see that one small business close. So it is a real struggle. I think brick and mortar retail is feeling it too. That's what we're hearing. The loans, the government assistance kept them running in the early months, but the longer the pandemic goes on and the way it seems to ebb and flow, and there's really no certainty about when it will finally wind down for good, there is a lot of concern in local media circles that we're going to see more businesses go dark, or have to pivot to something very different just long enough to hang on.
I think what you're describing, Jay, is a story writ large across the entire country and virtually every single community. The local businesses that are at our corner here in Wasco, Illinois, are all favorite businesses of my family, and we're watching all of them go through all sorts of different struggles. Liz, the stage is set. What are you doing as a local publisher, a local media, to assist the small businesses in your area? And please, you can be as expansive as you want on this, of the things.
Okay,
that
I have a list, David.
Good. Okay, good.
So stop me if you want me. No, I mean, I have a list I can, just run through quickly, but I think the foundation of all this is, like I said before, being creative and being innovative and listening to what local businesses and the chambers and other community leaders are saying the community needs. So at the beginning, we have done this throughout, but I would say in the first 30 days of all of this, we were kind of, I don't like the word scrambling because it sounds like we were struggling. We were kind of quickly meeting and brainstorming almost every single day with every single team we had to say, what can we do? How can we help the community? Of course, we're hurting ourselves at that moment, right? So our revenue went down by 35% right away. But we knew that as our role in the community meant that we needed to be a leader to help everybody through this too, right? So a few different things. One is we just started putting out all kinds of ads in our own newspaper and all of our products that says, we're here for you, right? We're here for you. We're still here. We're not leaving. We're not going anywhere. Whatever you need, come tell us, right? So that's it was a general message, but it was a simple one. And we showed a picture of all of our employees so that everybody kind of knew that we were still going to be here no matter what happened. So the next thing we did was we decided to offer free business listings. This is in March and April, right? So we basically, and then we ended up running it for several more months. We just put out in all of our publications and online and through email and in social and every channel, we said, if you want to run a free message about your business, and it was like a text listing, but we grouped them all together on a page, and there were hundreds of them that got submitted. And we weren't charging for them. We just wanted to help these local businesses get some sort of business so they could make it through in the very short term. So we got a great response from that. And then, in general, we coached our sales team a lot on just doing wellness checkups, we kind of called them, so that they were just calling and saying, how are you doing? I'm here to listen, right? And we were telling them, don't try to sell anything right now. I mean, this is, in that first 30-day period. Just try to understand what challenges these businesses are facing so that we can figure out what solutions we can offer. Again, the foundation of all this is if they don't survive, we don't survive. So right. We had to think about how to help all of them before helping ourselves. We ran a couple crisis marketing webinars that was really common across the industry. So we had two different experts that we hired to just run these free seminars for local businesses about marketing. Of course, we wanted to generate leads, but we also wanted to just help them through this to show that in order for them to continue to generate revenue, they needed to get their message out in some way, shape, or form. We had several meetings with all of our local chambers. So we would kind of be the central point, and we would just have collaborative calls with them. We would say, what do you need? What can we do to help you? And we did a ton of collaborative things where they promoted things for us and we promoted things for them. And we always have been collaborative with our chambers, but this kind of went to an extra extreme, I would say. So they got tons of free ads, and in turn, they publicized all kinds of things for us too, to their members. We launched our advertising match program, which it has a different name, but it's the same thing that happened all over across the country, right, Jay? Mm-hmm. Where, and it's, maybe a little bit different iteration, but the premise was the same. For every dollar that an advertiser spent, they got a free dollar in matched advertising. So you could market it as $500,000 available to the community in free marketing, or however you wanted to market it to kind of, and of course that one was certainly to generate revenue for us, but it gave a ton of value to the local businesses, that this sort of unprecedented, right, that kind of offer, and it really helped them and it helped us. We're still using it right now all the way through. I mean, we kind of decided month by month where we're going to continue to use it, and it's been very successful. And we get feedback all the time how happy people are with that. I promise I only have one or two more things.
That's all right.
And then we also got creative with, again, most of the things on here, obviously the advertising match program was to generate revenue, but most of these things on here were free so that we could use the sort of our platform and our local audiences to spread the message. So we got really creative. I love this one because it was so much fun. And we created something called RJ Shop Local Live using Facebook Live. So the main goal was to generate business right away. And we borrowed this idea and sort of revamped it for our own market in a little different way. But a local chamber in Rhode Island had been doing a similar version of this. And we made up our own version, and we went out to all kinds of local businesses in our markets, mostly small local businesses, retail shops, restaurants, all kinds of different industries. And we would walk into their business. I mean, they knew we were coming, obviously, but we would do a quick, and it wasn't a news interview because the specific point of it was the call to action. Call this business right now and place an order, right? So it was like, tell us about your business. And if it was a retail shop, they would walk around, they might try the clothes on. It was like very fun. And it was like a conversation, but it was all meant to drive business to these local businesses right away. And it had huge audience engagement and success. And it was really fun. And it also made us, I mean, frankly, all these things make us look good, which is selfish, right? But at the same time, we're helping the community. So we hope that all these things, down the road, people do, they say, oh, I saw you on Facebook. I mean, I was shooting these videos I still do it actually. And so it's nice to get out there too, with your mask on and all the, safety precautions and everything. So people see that you're out in the community when the community needs you. So that's my list, David.
Bravo. I mean, incredible. And I see why you won awards for what you did. And just fantastic. John, you hear that story from Liz, and you're called upon by a lot of publications to kind of consult and give the advice of rejuvenation of downtowns, but now it's had kind of this urgency of COVID. What are the things that you recommend to local media? Here are the things that we think you should focus on.
The first one is honesty, and why I say that is there was a poll done, and this is fairly recent, and some of you may have seen it, but about 75% of your community is not aware that the newspaper or the media company is in trouble. That they think they're just sitting fine and they're out to help, but they may have a little bit of struggle with COVID, but they don't think there's a financial crisis going on, and there is. And what I've found is, one of the examples I'll use is I got a call from a newspaper in South Dakota, and I started doing, I think I may have mentioned this on the phone with you, but he asked me if I'd come and work with their newspaper and just kind of help them become more ingrained in the community. And I thought, well, I kind of did this on a whim, but I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do this if you can get me an audience of the chamber, the city, several city leaders, a few civic leaders. And if you have a Main Street or an economic development, I need them in the same room. But I need everybody in the same room for a couple hours. Because the problem is everybody in these communities have the best interests of the community at heart, but they're all rowing in 5 different directions. And no one is working together. And so I kind of thought I wouldn't hear from them again. And about 2 weeks later, they called back and said, hey, they're excited. They want to do this. But I found this out with working with Hearst is that, everybody wants to do the right thing, but they don't know necessarily there's more than one right thing, but you've got to select the right things and do them together. You know, 2 plus 2, you know, using fuzzy math can really equal 6 if everybody's on the same page. And that's kind of what I would suggest that a newspaper do. But, you know, I think a newspaper right now is positioned, and I keep saying newspapers, but, you know, it could be a radio station too for that matter. But I think they are positioned probably the best that they've been positioned in the last 20 years to take their community back. I think most communities have, or most media companies have basically given their leadership role, their community voice away. You know, they provide local news. You know, what's local news? You know, is it crime? Is it the city meetings? Is it, you know, all that is local, but is that ingratiating yourself to your community? Do you have, you know, it's, you know, we have to report on the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's a given. But how many of us really lead with that role? And it goes back to some of those things I mentioned earlier. Are we educating our community to the value of shopping at a local, you know, other than just having it, you know, shop local, and we have, you know, November's Shop Local Saturday. I hate that American Express Shop Local Saturday thing. And the only reason I hate it though is because it makes it sound like one day a week we're supposed to go, or one day a year we're supposed to go shop local. In reality, every Saturday should be Shop Local Saturday. And actually some communities are starting to figure that out. But, you know, and you have, you know, the Amazon Prime Day of the year was just what, last week, I think it was. Mm-hmm. You know, and communities, I saw a lot of newspapers, a lot of media companies just touting that big time. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, why don't you tout all your local guys out here struggling, you know, and help them out? Because, you know, and I believe that communities are looking for leadership, because there's a void there that newspapers and radio stations have left. And, you know, due to staffing, due to lack of resources, you know, it's not all their fault, but it's just a void over time has been created. And I think the community is dying for somebody, and quite frankly, the newspaper is the best situated business in the city to do it, to take that leadership back and lead in such a way that, you know, the local businesses they'll embrace you when you have that message. The chamber will embrace you. The city will embrace you. So instead of always reporting the crime, now you're reporting on things that the mayor's out talking about. Did you read that thing in the paper the other day about shopping local, about the DNA of being local, about how it helps poverty, how it helps housing prices go up when we do that? You know, you get people talking in the community about that, and everybody's on your side. And what happens when everybody's on your side? You know, then you're honest with them. You know, you let them know we're struggling. They don't want to lose you now because you're leading them. So they step forward. And, you know, you'd be amazed at where the money comes from in a community. You know, it doesn't come from ad dollars. You know, we still keep barking up those trees. But quite frankly, if you want money in a community, you go to tourism, you go to the arts, you go to all those places that all these nonprofits figured out 50 years ago have deep pockets. That's where you go get your money. And you can do that if you're leading in the community. You can't do that if you're just going for the next ad dollar.
Well, it seems like what Liz was doing is more than anything, putting a face to why you should care. Yep. I mean, I think your point of honesty is a good one. I think that all business people, all entrepreneurs are reflexively guarded when it comes to saying I'm struggling. But if really it is, if it's more driven by the obvious face-to-face value that Liz was demonstrating by going into a business and doing Facebook Live, can't think of a better three-dimensional, fully illustrated example of this is why Liz cares and this is why you should care. And I think it's just a terrific example of great things to do. But I hear you loud and clear, John. I mean, I think it is an incredibly opportune moment. Jay, would you say that your membership gets that? Are they feeling it yet? Are they rising to that?
You know, it's interesting. It's an interesting question because I'll give you the example of how a lot of local media who participated in our COVID-19 local news fund, how they handled the outreach to the community. Just a quick backstory. We decided very, very quickly as the pandemic worsened in the spring, that we needed to do something for the sustainability of some of the local news organizations that were our members or our constituents that were really struggling with the ad downturn and already had secular headwinds in their businesses long before COVID. So we established a way through our foundation to raise money, basically crowdfund extensive public service coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic in local communities. And the money that we raised in each of those communities, working with those media organizations, went to ensure that they could continue to provide coverage above and beyond what they would be able to do without that funding. So the message to the community was a little difficult for some of the local media who participated. I think Liz could probably tell this story as well, but local media are not used to explaining their own financial hardships. This goes to John's point as well. They're not used to explaining their own financial hardships to the community and asking for help. They are used to, based on a long history of journalism and public service in their communities, and also on a long history of business success in their communities, they're used to being sort of a pillar of the community that helps others raise funds for good causes, not necessarily being in and of themselves the good causes. But it's interesting how a crisis gets you to respond, quickly and with force. We raised over $1.7 million for local media around the country. More than 270 local media organizations participated in the COVID-19 fund. And that also is an indicator of how much communities, whether it's business leaders or the community at large, are willing to support local news media because they do consider them valuable public services at their best.
That's terrific, and I think you're right. I mean, I think that really, even if it's a matter of reaching out on a crowdfunding basis, really trying to get that financial infusion. So, Liz, are you, much of what we're talking about this week in our perspectives and analysis and insights into the state of small business is tracking some major transformations that the pandemic has brought on. And probably at the very top of the list is what's called the digital transformation, is that small businesses are forced in a variety of ways now to have to adopt e-commerce, to have to create digital connections to their workforce. They have to basically figure out how to create more digital communications to their customers, to their consumers. What role does local media play in assisting those transformations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, I think it starts with helping the local businesses understand that they should be innovative and creative. I don't think that's just our role. I think that's the chamber's role and in the community at large saying, hey, we want you to survive. So how can we do things together to be innovative and creative to help you stay in business, right? Or to help you thrive even in these times. And so I think is encouraging them to be innovative and creative, and then of course helping them find the solutions for that. I think it probably depends on how many local resources you have at your media company to offer, right? And so it could go in the direction of just digital advertising or digital marketing services. So we have a full service digital agency, and a lot of media companies do now. So there are certainly solutions that they can. I'm going that route first, but just for the sake of this discussion, that they can purchase from a local media company that they might not traditionally think local media companies offer. So it's a struggle for us to be in the newspaper box all the time, right? When really we're a multimedia company, and that's still an education, even though it seems, oh, we've had a digital agency for over 5 years. Everybody knows. And then you go talk to someone, they're like, I didn't know you offered that. And, and you're like, oh, it's so frustrating. But anyway, I mean, that's our job, is to educate people, of course, and market ourselves, right? So we're a marketing company. We need to do a better job marketing ourselves. But so there are certainly things that digital marketing services or other, e-commerce platforms and things like that they can buy through local media companies a lot of the time. And then I think, from a transformation standpoint, maybe thinking a little bit more creatively and outside the box of what other resources and advice and consultative services the media company can provide, probably at no cost at this point, right? And just say, can we help you think through how to do things differently? And I think a lot of local businesses, I've been so impressed and proud, frankly, of the local businesses in our community for how innovative they are and how strong-willed they are to, find a creative way to stay in business or do business completely differently. Jay, to your point, there's lots of businesses who are doing even better now than they would have otherwise, because they've been forced to be innovative and they rose to the challenge. So I think just supporting them in any way they can, any way that the media company can, outside the traditional role we might play, just with, paying for a service. And so I'm just kind of brainstorming. I didn't prepare for this exact question, but I'm brainstorming on the fly here, thinking, what if your accounting or business office might be able to provide some support? Or what if some of the digital marketing vendors that you have might be able to provide some consultative services, even if they're not buying something from you, right? So I think any creative way that you can help a local business during this time is going to pay off in the long run, or even the short term too, to help them transform and do things differently.
Well, there's no question, and I hope you guys take the opportunity to listen to some of the research presentations this week at this event, whether it's from Accenture or from Alibaba.com or from Pitney Bowes or from Womply. There is just an overwhelming preponderance of evidence right now that small businesses are focusing in on a handful of things that really they believe are going to be key drivers in not just their recovery, but their true rebound and beyond. And one of them is really all around digital, and inclusive of that is e-commerce. Another is really around new business models that they're trying to figure out. And it could be as simple as the tactical, like Jay, your example of churches of Chick-fil-A, the restaurant that converts to 100% curbside delivery or pickup or catering or something, or a food truck or something like that. But their small businesses are really thinking hard about, how do I operate and financially succeed with maybe a new model that I'm going to apply. And the last one is that they're looking for assistance in understanding how to really manage their workforce and manage the workforce in general, as being this preponderant employer out there across the country. They've been forced to do all the things that we've been forced to do, which is work virtually, work remotely, work skinny, work lean, all those things, and they're looking for that kind of help. So I think that at least the playbook is kind of in front of us, is if what we do is like you do, Liz, just respond to what the customers say they really need and want from us. So I'll come around one last time and start with you, Jay, go to you, Liz, and John. I think you'll have a lot to say about this, so I'll end with you. But you're talking to an audience of leaders within large brands who sell at very large scale to small businesses who are frankly flummoxed enough by the fragmentation that exists across all the millions of small businesses that they serve. And when you talk to them about, now put a localization cut on that, their eyes kind of glaze over. It's like, how on earth are we going to not just address all the different business categories, but address all the different locations? What all the CMOs now will admit, though, is that because the recovery is going to be so uneven geographically, and it's going to have all these lumps and holes in it. They're going to have to figure out a way to be responsive. So your opportunity is basically to say to that audience of national players why local media could potentially be a terrific partner in helping them address that challenge. What help do you need from them? What do you want from them to help small businesses recover?
Well, if you think about it from the perspective of a typical small business proprietor, they may have exactly the same dilemma facing the world of software as a service, and everything from payroll systems to point of sale systems to CRM systems to web hosting to SEO marketing, HR systems, all of the different, again, you've got what, 80 some logos represented just on the promotional emails that you're sending of sponsors here. And I assume you have many more organizations like these that you work with. And looking at some of these names, for a typical small or medium business proprietor, the opportunities to invest in solutions and platforms and services, especially in the digital realm, is so huge as to be daunting and very difficult to prioritize. If you really take the word media at its literal definition, you have local media operators who can potentially sit in the middle of that confusion and sort it out for both sides. The potential is there for local media, the people that, we used to call our ad reps or our sales executives, to truly not just reprint their business cards, but truly become marketing consultants and business consultants on behalf of local small businesses, medium businesses, which are our bread and butter. There's also the opportunity in forming relationships between a lot of the service providers that are represented in your constituency, Dave, and some of those local media groups who already have established digital agency businesses, and in some cases, business consulting services that go beyond just marketing and really kind of get into more back-end process improvements and just everyday things like how to use G Suite or how to make sure I know how to update Google My Business, especially in the time of COVID. That's kind of important. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity if there can be some drag reduction in the relationship between local media entities and a lot of the technology and service providers that are represented in your constituency. I think it could be to the benefit of those providers as well as to the benefit of the businesses that we work with every day.
That's a great bridge, Jay. It is very well put. Liz, I'll give you the floor. What would you ask?
Sure. I'll probably sound like a broken record, but just, a reminder, we're a local business too, trying to get through this. And like I said, we're trying to be a leader to help everybody else through this too. I think, I don't want to say, hey, give us referrals. That's a simple answer to say that, but that's not that. It's more about reminding local businesses that in order to make it through this, they have to generate sales, right? So some of the things that we were doing for free were just to help them get cash in the door. RJ Shop Local Live, the free business listings, because once they stop having a cash flow, they really can't do marketing, but they can't spend money with all of you either, right? Mm-hmm. So I think reminding local businesses that a pandemic is not time to stop marketing and stop getting your message out. It's actually more important than ever, and you can be really creative with it too. And that will help generate sales, hopefully, right away, so that they can spend, obviously we want them to survive in the long term as well, but that they can actually start doing all the other things that they need to be doing as well. But first and foremost, they need to get people in their door right away. This is true still now, but it was even, it was like critical in the beginning because people were so afraid to do anything.
Long ago, our members abandoned local sales forces or street sales teams. And I guess, you know, to play off what Jay is saying, and to a certain extent what you're saying as well, is the opportunity to reestablish the local relationships through local media is a big opportunity for a lot of these national brands. So John, I'll let you kind of answer the question, because I think you're going to bring some pretty unique perspectives to the answer. What do you think our community, what role should they play in helping this recovery and working with local media?
Put me on the spot here. It's so
somebody told me you were smart, so I just wrapped up with you.
I think that the two previous answers were good starts, quite frankly. I think, Jay, you know, the media is in the middle. And that's kind of the conduit into that community for major, you know, corporations and the big hitters in the economy. But I guess knowledge is key, because, you know, everybody has to realize, and I don't know that everybody does, that so goes small business, so goes your community, so goes your state, so goes your country. Most jobs are with small business. And that will impact the American Expresses of the world, the MasterCards of the world. Everybody will be impacted if small business fails. And so I think the key here is the understanding that the local media, I'm going to back up here a little bit too. I'm going to give you two answers here a little bit, because we were talking about the honesty and the example that was used, you know, being afraid to share bad news. I was working with a paper in Tennessee this is about a little over a year, probably 2 years ago now, that they were getting ready to convert from a 5-day, they were going to go to 4 days, and then eventually down to 3 days or 2 days. They hadn't decided yet. And they were going to put it in the mail at the same time. And they were really wrestling with this because, you know, and I told them, I said, well, I said, in my opinion, it's the wrong strategy. You know, you're doing death by 1,000 paper cuts. If you know you're going to go to 2 days, you know, the paper, you know, this is during the time that the newsprint prices were going through the roof and the national media was making a big deal of it. So everybody knew about it. I said, you know, use that crisis to your advantage and tell the community, you know, this sucks, but, you know, we have no choice. Either we raise your ad prices and your circulation prices or audience prices, or we have to go to 2 days. You know, and we've chosen, we don't want to jack up the prices. You know, you're price sensitive, we all are. So we're going to go to 2 days. And the publisher wrote a letter to the community, kind of outlined the financial case for it. And boy, they were just waiting to get blasted. And the first day it happened, they got the same amount of calls they would have got if they hadn't done anything. I mean, the phones rang off the hook. But it was interesting because they didn't lose one customer. And he said, you know, it was interesting. I had probably 3 dozen conversations that day with somebody, and the general message was, it sucks, but, you know, we kind of understand it. You know, we're all on the same boat together. And they didn't lose a subscriber. You know, you went 5 days to 2 days, went into the mail. Typically, everybody's afraid they're going to lose a lot when they do that. And I look at that as a great example of the community wants you to be upfront with them. They want that. They thrive for that. And so now I'm going to use that and go back to the question that you asked. You know, what can the bigger businesses do? You know, I kind of knocked American Express at the beginning, not because of what they were doing, but because how the communities were looking at it. You know, I applaud American Express for trying to help, and it would be nice to see you know, what would happen if 50 corporations did things like that. And it's not a matter of everybody doing a lot. It's everybody doing a little, you know, and what can they do if everybody, you know, to Jay's point, that, you know, the GoFundMe and the money you raise, it probably wasn't any one person donating $2 million. It was a lot of people donating 10 or 50 or $100. And so corporate America can do the same thing. I mean, we had it in my previous location when we lived in Illinois, and we started this just before I left. So I didn't even know if they're still doing it, but we created a local Shark Tank. And once a year we would invite, and then like I said, I was gone when they actually pulled it off, but we would invite high school kids to present ideas, and we invited a lot of the corporate leaders in the community and political leaders to be the 5 judges. And they had a pool of, and actually the corporate people had donated money. There was probably 50 grand in the till, and they were going to fund 2 or 3 high school businesses, startups. And it was all because corporate leadership stepped up and said, hey, let's help our local communities. And I'm not using that to say every corporation should try to, throw a few $1,000s in every community, go broke. But, there are things they can do like that at least send the message that we care. But once again, working through the local media and knowing that the local media is struggling, there's a lot they can do to help them. A lot of publishers have no idea how to make this pivot from print to digital. They know they have to, but they don't have anybody to hold their hand and show them how to do it. I think LMA does actually a pretty good job with their people trying to help people make that digital. And they probably pull their hair out all the time trying to figure out how do we get people to move quicker. But at the same time, I just think it takes everybody rowing in the, go back to the original analogy. We all have to row in the same direction, whether it's corporate America, whether it's the smallest business in your town, whether it's city leaders. I guess that would be my thing, get in the boat and row together. However that may look for every company. I've got other ideas too, but they're more one-off ideas. But
well, that's a absolutely great way to wrap up. And I mean, hopefully the 4 of us have demonstrated that, hey, we can get in the same boat, and we can at least start pointing in similar directions of where we think. I hope that, Jay, I hope you didn't take offense to the pulling your hair out remark. Because clearly
do it at this point.
It's clearly had consequences. You guys have been absolutely terrific. I want you to stick around after we wrap this up, because I'd love to talk to you more about what we can do. But I think exactly as advertised and exactly as hoped for, I think you guys told the story of local media, told the story of the role of local media, told the impact that you can have on local businesses, on small businesses, which all of our constituency cares deeply about, genuinely about, all of you care genuinely about. And to John's point, Jesus, why aren't we working better together to frankly save this group of ours that is in trouble? I mean, we wouldn't have any problem if it was a hurricane, right? And we'd all drive there, we get out our chainsaws, we'd put up tents, we'd cook food, we do all the things that we needed to do to help recover. I think that's kind of the spirit that's called for now. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Liz. Thanks so much. It was so nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
And John, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yep, no problem. Enjoy it.
And Jay, thank you very much. And you represented the Local Media Association really well.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.